All this talk of killing, too easy. Can you give birth to 3 birds with 1 poem? Mama, I am still shaking off the darkness of the womb. And perhaps that's where I go wrong. Attempting to illuminate instead of cozying up into your fertile purple cloak of I have no idea, worthy of presenting in the face of this love that generates and regenerates our fragile and somehow invincible song. This episode is sponsored by your mother, who requested that we attempt to reason with you since you never listened to her. No matter where you go, I will always be there, and no matter what you do, I will always love you, whether or not you like it. Of course, I prefer that you eat your vegetables, wear warm socks when it's cold, but really, I just want you to accept yourself. Welcome to the Hearse podcast. Our guest today is Kimberly, aka Mama 3 Birds, doula, writer, actor, mystery, and mother, and whatever else you want to explain to us about your identity in the name of the no-naming namelessness, as we were just talking about. Yeah. To begin, I would like to read something from you that you wrote about your vocation as a doula. To me, being a doula isn't something you become, but something you already are. It is an existence within yourself you unearth. I feel this way about a lot of the roles we play in life. Much of adult life is unlearning what we think we know in order to find more of our innate childhood gifts. Doula work is not just a simple profession, it is a way of life. It is activism to the highest degree. It has brought me to profound grief, acceptance, and love. It is not just about birthing babies, it is about the liminal space between birth and death. It is walking this path with other women as it has been done since the beginning of time. It is an opportunity for great heartbreak, for an unraveling, and a restitching of self. It is cesareans and home birth. It is ultrasounds and free birth. It is miscarriage and bottle feeding and breastfeeding and mental health. It is the intersection of all things human. Whether you're a new doula looking for guidance or a mother looking for support, welcome to this wild adventure. And welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. As I stumble over words as the man, I felt that a reverence of, having you here. And it's nice that I'm lower on the ground. I didn't do that intentionally, but definitely excited to learn about stuff that I, as a man, could never really understand, I guess, but trying to empathize and wherever this conversation wants to go. But yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I've never sat up before. Normally it's so that is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good dynamic.
Yeah.
So to lighten it up a little to begin, there's a joke that you may have heard that's very short where Buddha goes to visit his mom and loses his shit. And I always like that, this dance between, for me, all the iterations of mother that are manifest in everything, life itself. Where do I come from? Where do we come from? And this anger and this wanting and this, wanting to go back and not knowing how to be, and this kind of dance. So, just bringing all those into the conversation today. My first inquiry was just deeper understanding of your perspective on unlearning, because that resonates a lot with me for life in general, whether it's whatever craft or just becoming an individuated you or all these things. So if you could speak a little bit to your unlearning processes.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it ties into like what we were talking about earlier as far as like being named in our life. Like, you know, we're talking about our friend who's taking back their birth name. And I think that, you know, we're sort of born and we have all these gifts and we have all this like innate knowledge and all these abilities and all these inquiries. And it's is slowly dimmed as we get older. And so for me, like in my life, I was born with, you know, this vibrancy. Like I'm really loud and I talk a lot and I love learning and I'm inquisitive and that was something that was pushed from me as a child really early on, like sit down, be quiet, right? And so then there was like this period of space for me that I didn't know who I was. I was sort of just like fumbling through life. And it wasn't until I got into my early 20s that I started like what I call like an excavation. But I was completely, I hit a rock bottom in order to get there. And for me, that was just like my journey. And so that excavation started like in my early 20s. And it wasn't so much for me like learning like outside like information, like gathering from outside. For me, it was what was already inside. But through my parental experience on earth, what that had sort of like instilled in me was ultimately to be quiet and to really like stay in line. And so I think like starting in like my early 20s began like this really like deep like excavation process of like really like who I am, because I think that who we are exists as we come into the world. And I think as parents, it's our job to hold space for our kids to allow them to flourish in the world instead of giving them identities or shushing them because of identities. And so I feel like I'm on a constant like archaeological dig of like who I am. I'm learning, you know, more about myself, less from what's like coming towards me and more of like what's already in here.
How does that come up for you, if you don't mind me asking? Because I agree, for me, it's being a parent, obviously, Rock in his rockness evokes inevitable parts of self, as being a parent will do. It'll bring out all sorts of things you didn't know were in there. But yeah, all the ways, you know, coming in contact, whether it's dreams, whether it's partnership, whether it's silence. Yeah, what are some of the ways that you're able to... It's funny, I interviewed and spoke with Lindsay Mack, if you know Wild Soul Tarot, yesterday. And it's this similar theme that I see with most of my friends that come on here, is the breakdown being the beginning of the vocation awakening, you know, and that breakdown needing to be there. And then distinguishing between the soul, if you will, and the chattering mind, or the social learning, in your case, knowing you have this vibrant, you know, louder, expressive, playful being, which I do as well. And then we're told to hush in different forms. So how do you feel that coming up? What does it feel like? What does it sound like?
That's a good question. It's so multi-layered and,
of course,
and complicated.
Yeah.
Goodness. You know, it's for me, my existence, I was born to somebody that emotionally needed me right off the bat. So I I came into this world as an emotional caretaker very, very early on. I don't know and haven't ever known anything different. And so that role was given to me in utero.
Wow.
And probably passed down immediately through birth. And then that was my lived experience. And so I didn't have much of a self or an identity for many years. I knew who I was deep down, but I didn't fully know how to grasp that. And I do think like when you're speaking to like the breakdown, right? The rock bottoms, you have to go like through the murk, you have to go through the shit in order to expand and to grow. I don't think you can stay, just like this. It's not a straight line. And how boring would it be? Yeah. Like, I mean, how boring would that be? But, I have really found that, I'm interested in life and all the hard parts too. Like they make up the fabric of who I am, and I'm not really afraid, to share those or to talk about those, and what that's like for me, kind of like on this journey. I don't really want a boring life. I realized that about myself at one point. And that means that I am sort of like willing to like get in the mud, like get in the dirt and fuck up and then like figure it out. So for me, I think that, like my higher self looks like, being okay with like things not being okay, if that makes sense.
100%.
Like I'm okay with not knowing everything, with making mistakes, with, turning around saying like, I could have done better and this is what I'm going to do now. Or I know I need to say no to this one thing, and I had said yes. And now I'm going to like recalibrate and I'm going to go back to no. Like I'm okay with things being messy. And I think that's how I like am building my life. Is honestly through the messiness, if that makes sense. And I think that we spend a lot of time being really, really afraid of things being messy.
Absolutely. And I can imagine your work. I mean, all crafts or passions, I think, will start to teach the laws of the universe regardless of what they are. Like there's kind of underlying seasonal truths to energy.
Yeah.
But I imagine your work has taught you a lot about that, the messiness, the beauty, the resilience, the fragility, the power, the bigger power, the, all these things. What you're making me think about, and I know I get that from you, even though we don't know each other, from your writing, from your spirit, you radiate a ferocity and a poetry and a gentleness, but a power, and moving up to where we live. And I was just thinking about a song called Small Town Talk, if you're familiar with that.
I don't know.
It's all small town talk, dun-dun-dun, where you
Yeah.
are, make some people crazy. Anyway, one of my favorite songs, and it popped in my head this morning, thinking about our conversation, thinking about the mirrors of the world around us and how to be yourself in a small town, let alone now the whole world has become a bit of a small town with social media because whatever.
Flat Earth.
Yeah, exactly, And so, just, watching the mirrors and finding yourself and messing up and talking about what I imagine would be kind of, and what did my somatic practitioner call it? It's a ambivalent attachment disorder, or the malleability that's required when we are caregiving or dealing with borderline personalities or dealing with, just trying to adapt to emotional environments to help others all the time. People, which can manifest as people pleasing. So if you had that, which I do in my way, I guess the vague inquiry is like boundaries, developing boundaries, how you did that, how you've become my favorite people and what I strive to become more are, it's almost like they have themselves through it all. They're not wobbling when and if things outside change as much. Of course, we react, or we're human and we're fragile and we feel stuff, but there's a return to you. So yeah, small town talk, being yourself, being bold, letting the shit fall where it falls.
Yeah. I love that. I don't have a problem with like the general sense of people pleasing. I could literally give two fucks if people don't like me.
Yeah.
I actually rather enjoy it.
Always like that? Like since young?
Pretty much.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, which is kind of a little bit more unique. Like I was the kid like in 5th grade, like if there was somebody getting bullied, like I'd raise my hand and be like, hey, we need to go help Johnny.
Yeah.
And everybody would just shudder. Like, why would she do that? That's embarrassing. Like stay in line, fall in line. Yeah. I don't really care. I actually really enjoy it if people don't like me. It's like, it's substance.
Wow.
You don't want to be liked by everybody. Why would you want to be liked by everyone? So I don't have that like people pleasing in that general sense, but as somebody that's been, caretaking and taking care of people from like the very beginning of my life, I do care that people believe that I care about them. Does that make sense? So it's
attunement.
So there's
it comes
difference.
with like an attune, or in my head, I'm thinking of attuning to people. Yeah. And letting them feel held or seen. And it's a fine line.
I want people to know, I don't care if people like me, but I like them to know that they could depend on me.
Beautiful.
So there's a difference there. And then also if the vibes are off, like I also just don't care.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I'll cut people if I need to from my life.
Yeah.
So it's kind of yeah.
And I guess to me also, it's an ongoing exploration, my version of that. But being a parent, dealing with other parents, schools, towns.
Oh, yeah.
Being an artist for me, where I do kind of excavate myself publicly. Like Carl Jung, for example, wrote the Red Book in apparently something like a 20-year psychosis, and the book wasn't put out until later. And it was like an astronaut like an intentional going into this mad liminal realm. But if he had been posting on Instagram, or if his friends had seen it, it might have been, it's kind of where we are now, not to compare myself to that, but as a poet.
Right.
So I walk around and I'm like, oh shit, so-and-so may have seen that post. And what if that, and I don't want to care. And it sounds like you don't care, but what has been your experience, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Bridges being burned. Is that real, or is that just like often a phantom like worry that's not even true because people don't give a fuck?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't like really, I don't worry about that. Like it's not something that I think about. I have a couple rules like when it comes to social media. And for me, like the way that I operate social media is I put out what I would be comfortable saying in person to someone's face. So if like I'm writing something and I'm going to make a post and I'm like feeling a little like a little nervous, like what's this going to feel like? I imagine if it's on a billboard, like, and people are just driving by, do you want that up there? Is that like what you want to like put into the world? So I'm pretty specific about what I post and what I write. It's also why I go through like long periods of time not posting anything or not sharing anything. And I'm also okay if things don't resonate or if there is a bridge burned. I grew up here, so I've lived in the same, small towns between Ojai to Cart my entire life. I moved when I was 6 years old from Manhattan Beach area, Hermosa Beach, El Segundo. And it's very difficult to reinvent yourself in a small town. Reinvention doesn't exist. People really want you to stay the same person. They want you to fall in line. they want what's expected, and people want easy. And so that is a challenging narrative in a really small town, which, like, you guys just moved here. You're probably having like some of this experience of what it's like to live in a really small town. But I don't know, I get off on it.
Yeah.
I like being different. And I think I've always been that way.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a problem with people being like, oh, that's what she does, or oh, that's what she says, or oh, she, posts bikini photos and talks about stretch marks. Like, I think it's my personality to not really care.
I mean, Molly and I talk about it a lot because she went to Pacifica up here,
right.
And currently there's like a war going on at Pacifica. I don't know if you're familiar, but they're trying to ruin the cohort and the essence
yes,
of
I do
what
know.
Pacifica
Yes, because
is.
I have a couple of friends that went through that program. Yeah, I saw that.
And it's kind of like, a little bit of what we were talking about with Sophie Strand, the naming. Sophie writes about, I was reading this morning in her book, The Flowering Wand, about storm gods, and a lot of gods originally were represented by storm deities, even biblically. Yahweh was like a cloud figuration. And then the difference of storm gods, which could destroy but also provided life, and sometimes the absence of a storm is worse than a storm because then it's barren and droughts. But sky gods become abstractions, and that's dangerous because now they're like disembodied. And Sophie wrote about the hanged man. Anyway, not to go on and on about that, but I was thinking about Pacifica and depth work, DEPTH, depth in any form of holding paradox, of nuance, of a post, which even saying it as like a post is not, it feels, anyway, it's like poetry, it's raw, but I was going to read it at some point, something you wrote, and you kind of, like myself, like Molly, are bringing through glaring hypocrisy or glaring things that, like Johnny being bullied and no one's saying anything, but this, like on a huge level. And yeah, I think it's a interesting time to feel. So Alejandro Jodorowsky, who I think his book is right there, Psychomagic. He's 95. He's a fascinating, strange, beautiful man. He posted something. He's 95, and he posted something this morning. He every Sunday does this thing, and it caught me. And it said, "Don't force upon somebody what they didn't ask for. That's how you hurt people." And I thought that was interesting. And I do know there's a part of me that's overflowing with this frustration with the world and the way, and is like, and then trying to distinguish between those two things, which I think you do an amazing job. But yeah, I just think, the attack on root system, the attack on feminine, the attack on birth. I mean, you could speak to it if you don't mind, or I can read it, but it's the post that you wrote. Sometimes it's hard for me to reconcile the contradictions between home birth and hospital. If you wanted to talk about that, I would be interested, because again, it feels like this, you're holding a mirror to something that you're in hands-on in the, experience of this, seeing that, but there's these giant systems that just keep cranking, and yeah.
It's an interesting way to live, because I think that part of when I say, like, I don't care what people think, or I don't care so much about like mundane opinion, is because when you work in birth and death, you just, like, your life is different. Like, my life is different. It's forever different. And it's why I'm here. And so there's so much depth to living, even when I'm not attending a birth, or even when I'm not seeing a family that's losing a baby, and I'm taking the remains to the morgue. I'm still living in that. I'm still living in that space all the time, and I think that's what gives me this, like, this ability to sort of transcend just
small town talk.
Yeah, small town talk. There you go. Yeah.
Wow.
The contradictions in the birth world, it's really fascinating because of social media, there's so much available now. I mean, it is just inundating. And birth, for me was brought into my sphere really early on. I'm the oldest of 5. And I was 18 months old when my brother was born at home, and I attended that. I don't have memory, but I have memory, if you will. Meaning I can't actually remember it, but I have memory. And then my second brother was born, and I attended that birth. And then my third brother was a triplet, and the twins died in utero. And so my first experience with loss and baby death was my mom sitting me down and saying, "I'm going to deliver the twins. They're not alive, and we're hoping that your brother will sustain, the rest of his life in utero," and he did. And so for me, my first experiences were really holistic. They were really natural. And I don't mean that in those typical ways. They just were primal. It was just me and my mother sharing this with me, and being on our land in Ojai. And it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of outside force or opinion back then, right? You didn't have to go get 45 ultrasounds to tell you what you knew was happening with your body. And
was there any kind of like Ida May or
yeah,
that kind
of course.
Stuff?
Yeah. I mean, that was the first book. My mom handed me that book for my fourth sibling.
Yeah.
And that was the first birth that she asked me to doula her. And I was 9.5.
Yeah.
And I read Spiritual Midwifery. And of course, my mom had support from a midwife, and she had support from an OBGYN. But so for me, my first experience into this world was this really magnetic, beautiful, primal, natural experience. And we have gotten so fucking far from that. We are going ultimately backwards. We're going backwards. We're in a.
Hopefully it's the rubber band. You know what I mean? Hopefully
I hope
it's one
so.
of those.
Yeah. It just all needs to be burned down.
Yeah.
We got to burn it down and start over. But it is an incredible, it's an incredible paradox, like what we are working with right now. We have really ultimately stolen from women the idea that they are capable. And that doesn't mean that there aren't medical interventions that are valid. Anyone that talks to me or follows me knows that I understand that better than anyone. There are medical cases. There are cases that require intervention. And how wonderful that we have that. But that doesn't matter. That's great. That's going to be there. The point is that we have ultimately pitted society against each other. It's now home birth, hospital. You are pro this or you're pro that. And on an even more intimate level, we've pitted women against women. I mean, I don't think that there's more infighting between women than probably, since the beginning of time. And I think that is exactly what the system is designed to do. I think it's working. I think it's working perfectly. I think it's a ruse. And I think that we're going to get to a climax. It's going to happen. And then I think we're going to dismantle. And I think that is coming. I don't know when, because I'm not a psychic.
Maybe right now we're going to tip the scales.
But it's going to happen.
AJ's beautiful hair. One hair is going to fall and the scale's going to tip.
But it's going to happen. It has to happen, because what we're in right now is a contraction. We're in a deep contraction right now.
Well, that's a perfect way to put it, because I think of metaphors and how Haruki Murakami, one of my favorite novelists, says everything is a metaphor. And I think about that. I'm like, what does that exactly mean?
I love that
Metaphor for what? Or the idea that words or names are signposts pointing toward the mystery. The mystery. And so what you just described really powerfully and eloquently is one of the, if not main, metaphors, I think, for everything in a weird way of where we are right now, in ourselves, with each other. And it goes into, agriculture, food, art, education, everything. It's all right in that rich polarity. And the contraction idea is the positive spin that I like to bring, because I've never enjoyed things that bring me to darkness as far as entertainment or anything that just leaves you there. It's like, well, I could have done that myself, just stayed in doom, because deep down I do feel this fierce optimism, the same as that spirit of you that you knew, the loud, the playful, like the system somehow is divine. Like there is some reason there's something bigger, I believe. I mean, I question it every day and I feel like, nope, actually it's a mistake. We're fucked. But I think that's normal too, in the contraction that I can only imagine as a man who hasn't or won't birth in the literal sense.
Right.
That all sorts of fears would be coming, through your head.
Right.
And that's okay. But yeah, the contraction of what's coming.
Right.
And maybe it's already happened in some ways, or like maybe it's stages, or maybe there will be one moment where the new baby is born on a mass level.
Well, yeah, and I think that there's multiple births happening.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, like the Earth has been in existence. Humans have been here too long. We're going to have multiple births.
Yeah.
But there has to be a birth when there's a contraction. We aren't going to stay in a contraction. It would defy nature.
Do you know Andy Weir? The egg?
Yeah.
That story to me is coming up because it's almost exactly perfect for this conversation. And I love when the gentleman dies in the short story and he's with like this kind of ambiguous principal quality figure who's God walking through the void. And it's like this stiff white man who died in a car crash, and he's like, God's like, oh, you're inquiring about your family. That's very sweet of you, but we know it wasn't a great like vibe going on with your family, but they'll miss you, but it's all good. But anyway, the end being like, it's all you. It's every single person is you. Time doesn't work the same way. You're now going to be a 1500s peasant woman in China. Wait a minute, what? And then coming to this conclusion. So you're saying I'm a god, and God says, no, you're a fetus. I love that, and this whole world is an egg.
Yeah.
So that resonates as far as cosmologies go, that I hold lightly. Yeah. And the oversimplification of the complexity of systems and letting it go. That's kind of what I was getting at before. It's like, I'm not alone. So you're here. All this whole podcast is an experiment to be like, it's not all on me, obviously. I mean, there's the young part of me that woke up and was like, I have to be Hanuman in my way, because the grief is so overwhelming.
I get that.
And I never thought I was fully alone, like full martyr psycho, it's narcissist, but it did feel like you're describing as being the one raising your hand, that there's an outnumberedness of desensitized. But more and more, we're all out here, and everyone is us. And anyway, I want, one of my other points, I have some points here, was you're speaking, I forgot where you said this, but I believe you said this, birth belongs to the feminine. Is that something you said? Okay, cool. Can you speak to that?
Yeah.
Because that resonates so much in Sophie Strand's ideas of the kind of solarizing of the earth feminine, in my intro talking about dear mother, I'm shaking off the darkness of the womb, and maybe that's where I'm going wrong by trying to illuminate, trying to know, trying to. So if that system has become this sterile, fluorescent thing, what is birth belonging to the feminine? You've described it a bit with the primal Ojai environment,
Yeah.
but a glimpse of the future for you, hopefully, or taking back.
Yeah. Yeah. God, that's such a good question. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, and I believe where, there is darkness, there is light, certainly. And so I believe in many ways that women will continue to regain power over themselves and over their bodies. And I mean, we all know, for so long how much of the stripping of, the feminine desires and ways has, just infiltrated the minds and spirit. And that obviously is going to trickle down to when you give birth and and what that looks like. I think that we're in this age where we're looking at women, and women are looking at themselves, and we're always looking outside. I've got to be like someone else. I've got to do what man does, or I have to do what she does. And I think that comparison and this and so much of this also came out of like the feminist movement, which I am very strongly not a feminist. And I talk about this from the traditional sense of being a feminist, of women can do every single thing. They can do everything the man does, and they can take care of the home, and they can take care of their body, and they can birth babies in their primal sense. And I think that idea as a whole really stole from women their natural instincts. It took away the ability for them to excavate, and sort of weed through who they are as people. And I was one of those people that was really in this like deeply masculine space. And I think by living in that space and then overburdening women as a whole, what we've done is ultimately stripped this sense of nurture and stripped this sense of, this ability to rely on instinct, and I see it in birth. I see it in birth all the time, and it's. It makes me think of it makes me think of Women Who Run with the Wolves. And, so many people have read that book,
Clarissa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her.
And obviously incredible work, but we're still like, as many people have read that book and as popular as that book is, we still haven't, applied so much of that knowledge to ourselves and to our life experiences and how we're treating women, in the feminine sense. And I think the lines have been so blurred between man and woman. We're so blurred. And, and I'll probably get crap for that, because people want to, they want that blurring. But I think there's value in the distinction. I think there's value in allowing ourselves to feel like innate nurturing, to tap into that. And I think that's been taken away by modern day, by women having to work full time behind computers. It's stolen their lives. It's stolen joy of motherhood. It's stolen the ability to birth in a sovereign space. And I think ultimately a lot of that has stolen this feminine aspect. And I mean, that could go, we could talk about this for a really long time.
You'll have to come back hopefully
Yeah,
a few times.
we could talk about it a really long
Yeah.
I could do a PhD on it, but I think it's something that's worth exploring because it's such a big topic now. You know, it's such a big topic.
Yeah. No, Molly was talking to someone recently about that similar unrealistic pressure on women to say almost verbatim what you said. It's like, you can work the job and do this and look hot and be the nurturer and do that, and that
Right.
impossible.
Well, and then they go into birth that way too, because
Yeah.
I have so many, clients and patients that they come into birth as if this is a class. And I tell every single person when I'm doing prenatals with them that we are not analyzing anything.
Yeah.
You have to leave the analytical brain and go into the heart space. You have to go into the primal space, but so many women are blocked.
Am I
Their
doing
heart
it right?
space is blocked.
Am I doing it right?
Yeah.
I mean, all of us have that program. What it also made me think of the band Redbone, if you're familiar, who apparently are, if not like the most successful indigenous like soul rock group. And I stumbled upon, their main big hit, Come and Get Your Love, was the dance anthem for us coming up to Kevin, bleep out. No one's allowed to know where we are. Seriously though, bleep that out. We would dance on the beach to that song, and now we listen to their discography, and it's really powerful, beautiful music. But their song, Wounded Knee, says we were all wounded at Wounded Knee, and that's it. So we were all. It's not just the feminine. It's not just women. We all are wounded by. If anyone's being wounded, it's rippling back and forth. So, not to take that away from. Or do another masculine thing of like,
no,
well,
I
me
get it.
too.
I understand the interconnectedness.
But feeling how that has hurt me in ways throughout my life. And again, it's separate.
Right.
But
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting because I think that interconnectedness, like you're talking about, which is just human to human relationship, can only exist if everyone is in their own sovereign power. And I think that there is so much clashing because of that confusion, right? Because
100%.
everyone stays so in their head, overanalyzing. Am I using the right terms? Am I doing the right thing? Am I making enough money? Am I putting something good into the world? Am I walking the line? Am I staying straight? Do I look cute doing it? Do I have enough followers? Am I cool enough for this person? And I think that's, I mean, that flow of interconnectedness, that ability to deeply engage with other humans and create relationships is only going to be possible, through individuals staying in their own sovereign space, but not staying individualistic. So it's really, it's super nuanced. It's it's super complex, I think.
It really is. And it makes me think of, the difference. It's sort of like you were saying, not caring what people think, but then wanting the right people who you're working with to know that you care. And the difference of being like a pain in the ass, stubborn, like that's not it either. There is like I know I keep referencing Sophie Strand, but it's because I'm reading it right now. But this idea of animism or other beings have other beingness. So it's not like projecting the rock, which is alive, has my consciousness. No, it has rock consciousness. So there's this kind of humble, if you know that everything is alive, you would walk differently because also you know that everything has a different way of being. So if you're interpreting everything through your lens, which just humbles you a little bit, but also not killing the you-ness of you. I remember being on mushrooms in upstate New York with my friend Miles. And I don't really my psyche is so sensitive that's why I'm sober now, which pisses me off. I wish I could have a beer. God damn it. I wish I could go to the apiary after this. But I was on a little bit of mushrooms and going around and feeling this lifetime inquiry of like, who am I? What am I? What are you? Looking at I remember the bee. There was a bee on a flower, and I felt the bee, and I'm looking at it like, do you know the answer? And the bee was like, you're freaking me out, dude. He's like, I'm a bee, bro. You're a Zach. Just chill. You're making everyone start freaking because if you ask that question too much, like, what is the bee? He's like, now I don't know what I thought I was a bee.
The bee is just being.
Exactly. The bee is being. And shout out to the apiary. And what's his name? Do you know the owner of the apiary?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to...
Starts with an N. Nolan?
Nolan?
No.
Is it Nolan?
Anyway, shout out to him. He's allergic to bees is my point, and he runs a bee.
He runs an apiary.
Yeah, so that's funny. But yeah, all of these things, and thinking about the constant modern distractions that keep us from what Molly pointed out is the real work inside. Because the moment you start going there, and there's nothing right or wrong. I'm guilty of it. I write we learn to adapt, and we're all beautiful and resilient for choosing to be here at this time, and you have to adapt, really. So maybe we have to do deep work quicker now, or we have to, mutate. But I remember looking at my stupid Explore page. Why do the Explore page is the most dangerous place? And mine is weird. It's like all this hip hop stuff and like, Molly's like, dude, your Explore page is weird, man. It's a bad reflection. I don't know how that happened.
That's whack.
But
those algorithms.
But it was somebody who I don't know who it was, whatever, and I go to their story for some stupid, how it happened. Suddenly you're on someone's story, and the guy's like, stop whatever you're doing right now. Come join us and I thought, wow, that's it right there. It's this constant stop what you're doing right now, which then as like a bigger FOMO, or I don't know what it is. Everyone's trying to we're being dragged out of literally stopping what we're doing right now, which hopefully is deepening and excavating. We were saying something about the distractions stopping us. Even our even our bladders try to stop us from doing the real work. God damn it. Bodies, life. No. But yeah, it's the contraction. It's, I think as Michael Meade, who I really look to in certain moments of distress as a pretty powerful mythopoetic lens, out of time and in time, says the symptoms are pointing toward their opposite, or the symptoms are kind of pointing toward unity. So, the fact that for me, my nervous system, whether it's like heat in my body, all these different things, they're pointing toward me being aware that I'm alive, that it's messy, and that there's something else that I am wanting. So that's kind of beautiful to reframe it. You know?
I love that. I just read not too long ago where it said something, I can't remember where I saw it. It was on a podcast. But it said that everything that we feel or think or experience is a signpost. Right? Like it's leading us.
And that can be tricky for me. Yeah, it's continue. I don't mean to.
No, yeah, no.
Well, it can be tricky for me because then, I work with a somatic practitioner.
Right.
Molly is trained somatic practitioner and depth psychologist. I feel like check in with your body. How does it feel? I'm like, well, it doesn't feel great. And it hasn't for like, I don't know. Does this mean that I'm wrong? I don't know. If my face gets hot and I turn bright red, is it because I'm Irish and just really sensitive? Or does it mean that I'm like,
could be,
but I think there's that, it's similar to the testing in a birth. Yeah. Like listen to your body, but that doesn't mean you're going to find this like perfect flow of comfort and like walk on waterness. It's you still might be feeling weird and off and shaky, and that is not necessarily a sign that you're doing it wrong.
100%. And I think like this idea of like, ooh, listen to your body or trust your body is kind of like thrown around and says turned into this like just very like it's a very like vanilla statement now.
Yeah. Exactly.
But like in regards to birth and what you're saying is trust your body when, when we tell people that in birth, or trust your instincts, or listen to what's happening, it doesn't mean that equals not feeling fear or not feeling pain or being uncertain, right? When it comes, birth is painful. Anybody that is touting this idea that birth is only orgasmic or everyone can have a pain-free orgasmic birth is absolutely full of shit. And that ethos is sort of, like this river through our culture, because we are so afraid of pain, and we're so afraid of being messy, and we're so afraid of fucking up, and we're so afraid of saying, this is intense, but I can also do it. When I'm standing with somebody and they're saying, and they're saying my name, and they're going through the really intense, labyrinth of birth, and they're saying Kim, and I just had somebody do this, where they were just saying Kim, 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 and instead of saying like, it's gonna end or it's gonna be okay, I just said, I know it's painful. Like, I know this is painful. And then we just name it, and then we just do it, and then we continue to just go through it. But we have this real need to try to push away anything. And so we say, well, trust your body. It's normally like high pitch, like trust your body, like trust the process.
I know.
And that's like really great, but it undermines how people feel.
Or the masculine is like, God bless everyone, but like the David Goggins, like just muscle through it all and like run through the pain.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, I don't.
Yeah. Well, that's a
I mean, God bless him. I'm sure
No,
everyone
he's doing
has
great,
like cool
but
stuff, but I just think everything
Yeah.
that becomes a thing takes away the individuation, like opportunity, like
Right.
I'm not
Right.
that. And like, and then that can freak me out because I feel like I'm doing it wrong. And then it comes in the
Or
comparison
anything
thing.
that is so,
Dogmatic
prescriptive
or
and dogmatic, and black or white. And in my birth work, and I've talked about this many, many times, my birth work is not dogmatic.
Yeah.
Because humans are so complex. Our lived experience is so complex. When I'm looking at someone and they're giving birth, I'm looking at who they were when they were being birthed.
Yeah, for real. Wow. Time travel for real though.
Right? Like I can commune with the baby and what the baby needs and what their relationship is to mother, and I just had this birth where the mother was really scared and she was young, and I asked if I could feel the baby and if I could, feel her belly. And we were in the hospital, and the baby told me the baby was perfectly fine. She said she was perfectly fine. She was incredibly strong. She had no concern. And I told the mother this, and she started to cry, and she had this big release, where she expressed her fear and she expressed the pain and she expressed what she was going through. We didn't try to fix it. I'm not a savior. I'm not a God. I sometimes can show up as just a mirror. And then she had a baby 8 hours later.
Wow.
And she just needed to be able to say, I'm scared and this is painful, but we don't make that space in society for that. We really want things to be nicely packaged. And that's just not my thing.
No, and it doesn't work for certain people or two like myself. I couldn't if I tried, and I think we're seeing the collapse, as you said, of why it just is not sustainable in any form. The dogmatic idea, I've been thinking we could name this episode, but we won't. We're going to keep it. But every episode is like a rapper. It has like all these different aliases like I did. But I've been thinking about be still and know that I am dog. Just flipping that prayer.
I love that. Yeah. I love that.
And then, just thinking about
Mm.
showing up, attuning, listening, hollow bone in shamanic culture. You may be familiar, but they say that's kind of, in some cultures, that's the goal of the elder, is to become a hollow bone where you remove everything that is, I guess, identity or, so in those moments you can be a pure channel for the energies that are greater. My dad said when our son was born, he showed up. He's kind of a trickster, and I never know if he's really, because he can. It makes me think of you talking about the hijacking of the confidence almost of women, and then the hijacking of the mind. That's where it gets really resonant and rich and deep and true for me. How hijacked I am and how grateful I am that my deeper part is resisting that, but it's so painful because it wants to go to sleep. Part of it wants to go to sleep. You want, that's what alcohol or whatever it may be. It's like, oh, I don't want to hold this fucking tension anymore. How do I ease it? But my dad said that he heard Rock say, long time listener, first time caller, but he's an asshole in a good way. I was like, I don't know did Rock really say that? I don't know. But that's beautiful that you're able to attune to each person and the nuance and the listening.
Yeah.
So as we slowly wind this Hearse adventure, not in a rush to hop out of the car yet, but slowly aware of time and families and things. And on a similar note to what I was just saying, that tension and craving some relief, what is that like for you? The constant, well, I don't know if it is this for you, but the fighting of systems, if you will, the uphill battle, the brave, the raw, the being an inspiring figure for people like myself, swimming upstream against algorithmic tides, body image, birth facades, everything, giant oppressive dominant systems, even good doctors get in trouble. You've said that, like embodying the ferocious passion and then letting go. Like, how do you navigate this, embodiment of all of those things, but then also just chill and relax?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Well, I mean, I would say that it's not always perfect. It's not like one answer. Like, ooh, I do this one thing and then I'm absolved of the grief or the stress of what certainly feels like fighting a monolith many, many times. I, on like a very like specific level, I create psychic boundaries around myself when I'm walking into a facility. For me, I believe in God. And so I ask God to work through me and do with me what he will. And so having that higher power and that, for me, sort of that, like that bubble, is absolutely key for me, because I don't feel like I'm alone, in the work that I'm doing. Cause I don't think that there's aloneness in it anyways. So it's really important for me to have that, on like a specific level. Before I'm walking into the hospital, I do kind of some cleansing, some breathing, some talking to myself, creating a really safe space for me. And then on like just a more basic level, I look at my kids. I make eye contact with my kids and I bring myself back down to earth. Because the thing with like activism that way, and the thing with working in a system like this, and this, this kind of overbearing, kind of disruption to self, is that it can take you out. I have experienced bouts of self-harm and extreme depression and anxiety, suicidal ideation, all sorts of things because of, this experience of being taken out of self And we could spend a lot of time talking about this because they're all trauma responses related to childhood. But I know how to work within the parameters now and what I need. And I think making eye contact with my kids, sitting at the kitchen table with them and bringing it back down to earth. And that creates this positive hormonal effect for me. And then, I have to get in water. So I spend a lot of time at the river and a lot of time at the ocean. And it reminds me that, there is something so much bigger than myself. And it's not just me, even if I have colleagues that are doing some of this work. And ultimately, for me, those are the things that matter the most, which is just being at the sea and being with my children.
That's an ancient tradition as well, the ocean. If you're familiar, a lot of tribes who would do psychic or intense work like that. Michael Meade said some of them would even chug salt water till they vomit to cleanse their
I put
bodies.
it in my mouth after births.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so that's
I rinse my mouth with salt water after births too.
Yeah, navigating between spaces.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm curious. I don't know if this feels, we can stop and edit, but I'm curious around, it's so touchy, but I feel like this is what it's about, the God thing. And I'm curious about, again, just as a mother, as a person saying birth belongs to the feminine, what is the dance of God being a hymn to you?
Yeah, that's such a good question.
Part of me is like, don't fucking ask that, it's not safe. But I've noticed that, and I can even feel panicky.
Oh right no, don't feel panicky asking me anything.
Because I don't want to challenge anything, but I felt I talked to a friend yesterday who grew up religious, but is also a gang member, but also is neither of those things and transcends. And he's a hero of mine because he could wear those things, but also defy and be an individual, where both of those things can grab you and ask you to put your blinders on. This is what we do. Right. I was joking with my mom. That's what pickleball. I was like, pickleball and being in a gang or a religion, they're all similar. It's like, this is our thing. Don't fuck with us. Yeah. I'm just curious around that, the male God.
Yeah. Yeah, I use that term. Yeah, that's a really good question. I have spent my entire life on an excavation of what higher power work looks like. I've been every religion. I am ethnically Jewish, and so I grew up in that tradition, and converted to Islam in 2008. Wow. And so what that looks like is saying that the Prophet Muhammad is the last and only prophet, and that you believe in one God and only God. So prior to that, I was into Christianity, Mormonism, Buddhism, dabbled going to the Vedanta. Wow. In Montecito. The Vedanta is they follow the Vedic scriptures. Cool. Yeah. So I have always had a really robust interest. So cool. And I don't fucking know anything. I only know what I know in the moment. Yeah. And I can live in the paradox. Yeah. I can live in the contradiction. Yeah. For me, that's where I'm at right now. That there's one God. Yeah. And for me, he's male. Yeah. Right now. Yeah. That's what I believe, and that's what I think. Yeah. And I'm also we're Navajo, so I'm also very in touch with the spiritual side. I'm indigenous culture.
My favorite.
Yeah. And that comes from my maternal lineage. So I don't really fucking know. I just go off of what I feel and what downloads I get totally at that moment in my life. Yeah. And I went to jail once back in early 2000s. I was in a really abusive relationship and he was feeding me drugs and I was stealing from my job. This is part of sort of my rock bottom, if you will. And I've told this story sometimes, but it's much more complicated than this. But it was the best thing that had ever happened to me. So my kids were safe; they were young, and they were with my ex, who is also abusive, but that's another story. But it was the safest I had felt in 28 years. And I had a rebirth experience there.
In jail.
Correct.
Felt safe, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
contained,
And it was the safest I'd felt in a long time, especially being, just physically being in an abusive relationship. But it was a spiritual rock bottom for me, was the safest I had felt. And I had a complete and total reckoning, if you will. But I dreamed I was born, and I had woken up in amniotic sac, and I was crawling through it. And there was a series of other things that had happened, but through that I met God.
Wow.
And shortly thereafter I converted to Islam.
Wow.
So that is sort of the little bit of the trajectory that I've been on. And, I think for a lot of people, we look at like the male like idea of God as this like oppressive and painful and hurtful or anti-woman sort of deity. And for me, it's come through as somebody that didn't have a father that was really emotionally available or physically around a lot. It's come through as a father. And who is loving and kind and caring. And
which implies that you have an openness for God's the train's like
we love
this
the train.
That's
childhood signal.
Exactly. No, but does that, if you don't mind me asking, imply that your belief holds space for everyone to have their own belief?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that you're almost, because to me, as long as we're all being aware, then it's just more interesting to me. So like knowing like my psyche might do that, but it's all kind of interpreting the mystery. It's all
interpretation. Yeah, it's all interpretation. No, and like, no, I'm not somebody that imposes.
Yeah.
I love to hear the variations of what people believe.
Yeah.
And for me, this is just my variation right now in this iteration of my life.
I was joking also, another title in my head is spelling hymn like a gospel hymn, HYM.
Oh, I love that.
And I was thinking of doing an episode called What's Wrong with Him?
Yeah.
And
I'm here for that. I'm here for that.
I was thinking about your quote on your beautiful website by Rumi. I don't remember it exactly, but just the love, like coming from love, we come from love. So to me, it's like
we are born of love. Yeah.
The maelstrom is my current. I pray to the maelstrom. Shout out to N.K. Jemisin, if you're familiar, great author, but she writes about in 100,000 Kingdoms, the first God given birth to by the maelstrom was Nahadoth, and then Bright Tempest, and then what's her name? She starts with an E. Anyway, but yeah, just holding it all lightly. I love that. If you don't mind me having this metaphor, because I say it reverently, but it's almost like I thought of religion as like goodwill. You've gone in and tried on all these different religions.
Yeah.
And they're all hand-me-downs too, because they come from somewhere.
Yeah, I still love it.
I went to a mental hospital when I was 24 for a chemically induced psychosis, similar to maybe your version, not being different, but the world forcing me into a place where I was like, I can't get out of here even if I wanted to. This is a different experience. And as I was living in Harlem, and it was kind of like a month-long thing, but I remember walking to this church on 110th Street. I don't know if it was St. John's, but big famous New York church, and then walking up, and then I came into Harlem, and I saw these men on rugs praying, you know, how they do multiple times a day. And I literally joined in. Like out of the blue, and they were looking. I was so like wide-eyed, and then I met a Crip from Tennessee named Not Inman, and that's his actual name. And then I was like, not in man. And then I was having this like, where I was like, it's not in man.
Wow.
And I was like, but anyway, I was like straight up walking through, and I met a shaman who smoked crack, who everyone would kind of pray to him in the neighborhood, and he took me in for a second.
Yeah.
But I've seen reality in this other, anyway, like you said, we could have multiple episodes.
I love that.
About multiple episodes, not manic episodes. Wait.
No. Well, no. Maybe some manic.
No, but holding it lightly and the fluidity and whatever God is or dog is, if you're dyslexic, it's an ongoing experiment, I would say. So that's the kind of poetry of it all.
And it's so interesting.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it all.
Yeah.
But I love life, and I love seeing what people think and what they believe in, and I love not knowing what I don't know.
Yeah. And I love all doors leading to more not knowing, and then the not knowing, you know, Hafez says, start seeing everything as God, but keep it a secret.
Yeah. I love it.
Or Rumi talking about the person crying out for Allah and a cynic saying, but no, you never get a response. Why do you do that? And then having a dream that night. And Kadir, the guide of souls, saying, why did you stop praising? And he said, because God has never responded. And then Kadir telling this person that the cry and the longing for that connection is the answer, and the whining of a dog for its master is the response. So for me in this show, as long as we're not cementing anything and saying, but also holding respect for forms and the need for forms for whatever gets you through the day and waking up and not losing your mind completely, or so God bless it all. Dog bless it all, for real. All right, to finish off, thank you really for that, for going there with that, because it's been on my mind, and it does feel, in a small town especially, like a pink elephant in the room is belief systems. And me as a poet who does hold, you know, everything, I believe the devil is God in a mask. That's what I like to say.
I love that.
But I mean that in a very like trickstery, respectful way. And out of context, someone might say, that's crazy. Like, you can't, you know, but all I mean is everything comes from one thing. And so I believe that the form of darkness, if you will, is just another form of it teaching us something. I don't know. It's just this.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to get, I don't know. I was going to make some weird joke about, you know, I mean, I guess there's trauma around witches and voodoo and burning and like purification and obsession with light. And that is scary because, you just don't know how to, you don't want to injure, like Alejandro Jodorowsky. You don't want to impose something on someone, but you also, you know, anyway, that's what this show holds space for.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too. And I appreciate it. So to guide us home, I think we've really covered everything, honestly. Is there anything you would like to add? And then I would like to finish by reading a Thich Nhat Hanh poem that Lindsay Mack sent to me yesterday after the episode, because I really think it sums up and brings it full circle. But is there anything you would like to flow on?
No, I mean, just thanks so much for sharing, and I love hearing your perspective on things. I love it. I love the complexities.
Thank you.
I
Vice
love it.
versa.
Yeah, I'm here for it. Yeah.
I mean, the Thich Nhat Hanh, which popped up on Instagram, not the poem I'm about to read, but said, in a true dialogue, both parties are willing to change. And I thought about that today, funny enough. I thought, okay, that's funny, that came up for me today. And then I'm going to have this, hopefully, true dialogue.
Yeah, I love that.
And being willing to, so as I digest this, and I wonder what will change in me, because I am open for that. And I want to continue soften and become more myself, but also let go of blockages. So
yeah, we contain multitudes.
and that's why when you said it, like you said him, I was like, whoa, that's like coming from you. It surprised me. And the fact that we were able to talk about it is so fucking beautiful to me, because I think a lot of the problems persist because of that awkwardness. Like someone might feel like, whoa, what was that? And no one will say it. But if it really is preventing us from having a true dialogue. So thank you. Again, I can't say that enough.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So Thich Nhat Hanh, what Lindsay Mack said as we finished yesterday was the whole time she was thinking about this poem. And it's Please Call Me by My True Names by Thich Nhat Hanh. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today, I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second, I am arriving. To be a bud on a spring branch. To be a tiny bird with still fragile wings. Learning to sing in my new nest. To be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower. To be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am the mayfly I don't even know how to say that. Metamorphosing. I want to say metamorphosizing. I am the mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands, and I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm, it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the 4 oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and my laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion.
Wow.
Thank you.
That tracks.
Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Kimberly, for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you, Maelstrom. Yeah.
Thank you, Z.
Thank you. You already know.
I'm sailing like a schooner through an ancient storm.